I'm jacking into cyberspace for some pleasure and some pain. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Mere Mortals Book Reviews. I'm your host here, Kyron, live on the 16th of April 2025. And as you might surmise, this is the podcast where you can stim directly into my body, into my brain, and watch me as I'm reading these books in real life. Okay, no, you can't do that, and you might get some pleasure in playing that's in my life as well. But no, we do have this book here today where you can do this, which is Neuromancer by William Gibson. So this was originally published in 1984, about 300 pages in length. I'd say it took me about 6 hours reading to get through in total. It's not super long, and it's actually a very fast read in some cases. In some other cases, it can be a rather difficult read, but we'll talk about that soon. This is a sci-fi classic that was right at the beginning of the cyberpunk genre, which is this mixture of the cyber, the future, with the punk, the kind of anarchic violence, body modification sort of scenes, and melded together. And this was, I guess, one of the books that created this type of genre. So in the book, we follow Case, who is a futuristic techno hacker, I guess, if you will. I believe he's American, although boundaries of countries and things like this have blurred a lot in this futuristic world. And he is hired to hack into a wealthy family's lair, which is actually out in outer space. So he's joined by a motley crew of people. We have Molly, the muscle. We have Armitage, the planner. We have Peter Riviera, who's the con man, I guess, if you will. Malcolm, maybe, is even the pilot. And they all interact together to essentially try and free an AI from its capturings, from its restrictions, so it can exist out in the world. So if you want to think about all of this, think of Japan, robots, drugs, implants, space, violence, sex, fashion, tech, culture. All of this is blended into this book as we follow Case, and it's told from his point of view as he goes through all of his trials and tribulations to, free all of these things. I make it kind of sound adventurous, and it is, but it has this gritty, real undertone, which is the more punk aspect to this. Of the violence, of really weird stuff, which is very futuristic in our cases, but also kind of like, why would you do that? Why would anyone be interacting and behaving like this? Now, there's 24 chapters in total in this book, but they don't have titles nor meanings, so they're just a way of separating scenes more in this case, which is actually useful because, once again, the scene changes in this book is a little bit hard to understand at times. So let's jump into the themes and questions. What makes us human, and does technology make our lives better? And it's kind of a simple question. What is a human? And what are the essential things of them? And you might start off with something like, it's the body. Humans are, they've got a head, they've got two arms, they've got two legs, they've got a torso, and various organs and things like this. And I think those assumptions are taken for granted in some case, at least in our current world, and even that's starting to change. Because in this new world of where Neuromancer is set, that is not the case. You cannot tell a human solely from their body, or you cannot say that a human is their body in many cases. So we start off with, I guess, Case living in Chiba, and he's kind of out and down of his luck. He's had a virus put into his mind, which means he can't interact with cyberspace, which is being to delve into this world of the Matrix, which, think of lines and codes and numbers, but represented as a actual 3D imagery, if you will. And he is living in this world, and he's interacting with, I guess, normal people. You see merchants, you see barmen, you see floozies, regular people going about their day, businessmen, pimps, all these sorts of things. I guess it's maybe not everyday regular for the vast majority of people at the moment, but you see, okay, like he's interacting with humans. But almost from the get-go, we see that these humans have very modified bodies. The barman, Rats, has this pure mechanical arm, which he uses. We see that Case himself has had neurological damage done to him, so his brain is not technically the brain that he was born with in some cases, and we're not even really shown how people are born in this world. We do have evidence of cloning in it, but not necessarily natural birth. Molly, who has these kind of cybernetic eye implants, which enhance her vision, and with these steel razor blades or some sort of very sharp metallic thing underneath her fingers, which can extract and extend and come in at her will. We see the Panther Moderns, which is this kind of anarchic terrorist group in some sort of case, which have taken body modification to even further extremes of almost turning themselves into cats, and will change their pupils to become cat-like, their movements to become cat-like, and or at least one of them in this case. So we see, all right, these people are not their bodies, and these freesiders even, so these are the rich, wealthy people. Imagine the most bizarre body modification you've seen on perhaps TV ever, which would be someone like the guy who's tried to turn himself into Ken, or the woman who's tried to turn herself into Barbie, or people with the, mouse-like features or cat-like features with kind of whiskers, trying to turn themselves into these bizarre creatures with hooks in their bodies or metal or implants all over their face and things like this. And that is probably about the regular person you'll find in this world. And I guess we can see that even in today's world, we don't necessarily associate every part of our body with ourselves. There are people who have had heart transplants and so have another people's heart in them. We have all sorts of things like nuts and bolts in our arms if we break our arm and things like this. Pacemakers, we can already start to see, all right, and if we've got Neuralink and things like that coming up, we could start to see okay, it could be regular for us to have actual implants and technology put into our body. This world just takes it to a much further extreme. So if it's not necessarily our bodies, what is it that makes us human? This is probably where I'd start to say it's like our emotions and motives, and these kind of mix together. It's very hard to determine what a human will do, and the AI in this world, named Wintermute, has said that when it interacts with humans, it is very much on a case-by-case status. It's always constantly evolving because it can't plan and predict what humans will do. Whereas with technology, it's much more easy for it to understand zeros and ones, that's weightings or probabilities, and it can plan ahead. Whereas with humans, it's very hard to understand or interpret what's going to happen. This is shown right at the start with a rather bizarre and unnecessary scene, in my humble opinion, where Molly has sex with Case, and they've just met. She's kind of the muscle to pull him into this motley crew and get them started on their adventure in some sort of case. And, she's this elegant, refined, dangerous, sexy girl. And he's this deadbeat, barely living loser, can't scrape together a few dollars or, what would they call it? Yen, in this book. There was another name for it. New yen or something like that. And she has sex with him, and it's just there's a really bizarre and rather odd pairing for casual sex. That was one thing that kind of threw me from the start. As we go on through the book, we see, why is Case still trying to unleash Wintermute from its kind of restrictions? It's, he's got these poisons in his body, and Wintermute's the only one that can kind of help solve him and, release these, let him live. But that doesn't seem to be his driving factor for doing this. Molly, once again, is ambiguous why she kind of continues on with this rather dangerous scenario. We see the suicide of Ashpool, who I guess he's kind of been tortured a little bit, but he's, one of the wealthiest, richest, most powerful people in this universe. And when we first interact with him, he's committing suicide. The lady 3 Jane and her mother Marie France's kind of surreal desires. What do you do when you have almost infinite wealth, infinite power, have license to do whatever you want, and the technology to make it happen, and they kind of destroy themselves but not destroy themselves? They try and create a legacy but also at the same time not do it. There's a whole bunch of things in this where you go, I don't understand why or what this human is trying to do. And this is, I guess, the real human aspect, because there's quite a few things in this book which are human-like, but not exactly there. So we have things like the AI Wintermute and its kind of AI compatriot Neuromancer. We have this construct, which is I guess you would call it the embodiment of a person into cyberspace and their brain. So it's a construct of a guy who used to live called Flatline, and even to a certain extent, Armitage, who has been psychologically manipulated so that he's become much more robotic and easy to control. They behave optimally. All their decisions are kind of calculated. They somewhat follow requests and orders a lot better than humans would. There's no second guessing or doubt or fear when they take actions. These types of things aren't really part of their makeup. They simply act. And even then, we can kind of see like there's human-like things in them. The two AIs, Neuromancer and Wintermute, are battling against each other. Armitage does lose control of the underlying human within him, which is a broken up war veteran called Corto. And they, the Flatline, for example, one of the things that really bothers Case when he's interacting with this guy who used to be his friend, his mentor, is when he's interacting with him in cyberspace, Flatline has this laugh, and it's this kind of cold metallic laugh. It doesn't have the human warmth in it. It doesn't have the I guess the zest of life, and it's inhuman like, and it irks him and puts him off. So those are just a couple of thoughts, I guess, of what would happen perhaps to ourselves if we developed a future like this, or we start merging with machines. And what actually is it that makes us human? It's more the emotions and motives rather than the actual flesh bodies that we have. But there could be a case to be made that the more you construct yourself, the more you modify yourself, the more you lose control of it. And if you've ever played the book, I think it's the game called Cyberpunks, and there was a Netflix series also called Cyberpunks Edge Runners or something like this. There you go cyber psycho if you modify your body too much, and so that is a world where you have the opposite case. So this book is it's fun to think about, but obviously there's no scientific grounding for any of these things. The technology part is more fun as well. When we look at it in this book, look, first of all, it's a dope world, so fucking cool, and yet rather bleak for a lot of people. And when we think about technology, I think by and large we think it's a good thing, yet there is acknowledgements that, okay, bad stuff can happen. So in this world, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a good world. There's a lot of death and violence and drug use and suicide that goes on in this, and killings. So if you were to look at it, you just from this book, you'd probably go like, oh, this is not so good. But obviously, this is a story, and we're thrown into a very extreme situation. So if we were to take any of the individual characters that we meet and who are just in their normal everyday lives, and I'm thinking of Julie Dean, the smuggler, of Linda Lee, the kind of young 20-year-old floozy who doesn't really know what she's doing with her life, the lost girl in some cases, Rats the bartender, Malcolm the pilot, Kath the rich socialite. If we were just to look at their lives and on day-to-day, year-by-year, decade-by-decade basis, we could probably say like, okay, there's a lot of freedom that happens in here. Whilst there's parts of this world which are dark and dirty, which is kind of Chiba, Japan, we also have Freeside, which is sunny and in space, and everyone is wealthy and happy. The Sprawl is this kind of industrial area, yet urban, futuristic place in the US. I think Boston area. Yet Beyoğlu sounds kind of like a current day Istanbul, with the markets and the excitement, the dust, the dirt, and things like this. So the world everything has not been cleansed and transformed into this clean monochrome white world, it's still very dungy and has aspects of it which are like, oh, okay, there's a lot in here which is not particularly nice. And I think that kind of mirrors our current world. Over the long run, technology increases prosperity. We see a lot of wealthy people in this book able to have basically all the material things that they want. It increases lifespan. There's people in this book who are hundreds of years old, if not longer, and allows for freedom of all sorts to express yourself in ways which are impossible at the moment, and can change the world to make it more hospitable to live. There's people living up in outer space, for example. So all of these things, you would probably say like, okay, overall, that's certainly a plus point for technology. Yet there's still extreme wealth disparity. There is still drug use. Humans still do really, really messed up things. I'm looking at you, Peter Riviera here, who is somewhat of a, I guess you'd call him a psychopathic torturer in this world. The pain is still both real in the physical sense, as we see people getting killed, and we see it in the emotional sense of betrayal, of losing loved ones, of things not being right, of feeling fear and doubt, and also in some sort of new way with the SimStim, where Case can directly go into Molly's body. He feels the things that she's feeling, yet they are not physically happening to his own body. So I don't know what you call that, a secondhand pain, something like that. So I think this mirrors exactly the real world. Drugs can save lives in this world, and yet there is a fentanyl epidemic, and we saw mortality drop in the US over the last couple of years because of a lot of suicides and things like this. So, is technology all good or all bad? It's neither, but it's probably more trending towards good. And to top this off, probably the thing that tips it over the edge is that you can have hologram pussy jewelry, which is what people were wearing on their wrists. Instead of a wristwatch, it'd be like a hologram with a vagina there. So that's pretty cool. Who wouldn't want to sign up for that? So jumping into the author, perhaps some extra details. William Gibson was born in 1948, American author. He's rather eclectic. He's traveled a lot. His early 20 periods of his life was rather interesting from the little bio that I read of him. He's kind of credited with popularizing this cyberpunk genre, as I was mentioning, and this book is one of the first breakouts of this. This is to be distinguished from cypherpunk, which is more related to using cryptology to be anti-establishment and for beneficial purposes, whereas cyberpunk is this mix of the cyber world and more the technology, the gadgets, the applications, the physical substantiation, and how this would look in a kind of anarchic, dirty, crazy world, something like this. So he's had lots of books, published lots of books with, I believe, 2 sequels to this, which I might try and get to in the future because it was a decent book. I enjoyed it. And he created a lot of words, and this is how you know it's a classic. Things like flatlining, the matrix, cyberspace, jacking in, biological microchips are all things that he came up with in this book and have somewhat influenced modern culture with, the Matrix movies, for example. So with that, I guess, vocab that he came up with and these, what would you call them, thematic memes that have made it into popular culture, we see this a lot with his actual words in the book. The vocabulary that he uses is very descriptive, and the things that, even just the names, sound really great. Yeheyuans kind of do sound like cigarettes in the book. Screaming Fist is an excellent war attack code name, which is used. The people in this book, Steppen Razor, Wintermute, Neuromancer, 3 Jane, 8 Gene, for naming of people, is very exotic and conjures up images of this world, which are, I think, really strong in that they're still understandable to us, but they are so different as well. Now, this does have drawbacks because there were numerous times throughout the book where I would have to look up words. If you know what semiotic hypnagogic triptych means, just out of your normal vocabulary. Kudos to you. I didn't, so I'd have to look up words like this. And these, combined with all the stuff he invented, means that at times you are going to struggle to really understand what is going on in the scene. Visualizations are, a lot of heavy lifting is left for you to do, because he doesn't make it super easy. And even at times, for example, right at the end of the book, it's this, a 3-syllable word which is used to unlock Wintermute, to free it from its restrictions. And I had to go back, ask the internet, reread at times to actually figure out what that word was, and it, turned out to not necessarily be a word. It was more tones. So there's going to be things in his style which are so surreal, you just have to kind of roll with the punches. The scene changes can be rather dramatic, and you might not understand that a scene has changed. The chapters help, the spacing of paragraphs help, but at times you're still going to be like, whoa, wait, like, what just happened? Where are we right now? So it did feel like my brain was doing a lot of heavy lifting. But there was a lot of subtle touches in the book as well, which I think really added to the depth that made it feel like it wasn't purely just this futuristic world that he's conjured, but it's like, yeah, okay, that's how humans would behave, or this is a inversion of expectations, which would make sense. One classic scene for me was, Case was on this train or subway of some sort in the sprawl, and he sees this group of, I guess they're just kind of normal body modified people. They're businessmen, perhaps. I'm not exactly sure what they were, but there was some evangelical Christians on the train as well, and you could see that they were gearing up to go and talk to these people and tell them about the good word. And from my understanding, these evangelical Christians were probably purists. They didn't have any body modifications, and this was kind of scaring these other people, because it's like, what kind of freak wouldn't have at least some sort of body modifications, which is rather funny. And it's kind of a switch, much like how nowadays I think that the person who is like the anti-establishment or more going against the grain is the person who doesn't get a tattoo, especially if you're in your 20s, where that is probably now the thing, which is like, whoa, you're bucking against the trend of culture. You don't care what your other people or friends say about, let's all get a tattoo together and things like this. And it's like, no, I'm not going to. So I love this kind of subtle switch of expectations. That was really cool, and mirrored something I'm seeing even in everyday life now. So jumping on to the summary, similar books, recommendations. It's just a cool fucking book, man. Everything about this just screams like, this is awesome. It's really hard to read it and not be like, man, I want to see this. Like, I want to be there. It just has this, I don't know how to describe it really, an atmosphere of you wanting to be there and experiencing that. I felt FOMO by not living in this world, or at least experiencing it. So I love the various worlds that are all combined. The scene switches from, this futuristic Chiba Japan that's dark and dirty, to the industrial kind of wasteland yet urbanistic sprawl in America, to Freeside up in space, this wealth and luxurious place, to the Istanbul type marketplace, to even the lair, the Villa Straylight of the Tessia Ashpools, who are this wealthy family they're infiltrating. All of this just conjures up like really, really cool imagery. And the story itself, the body mods, the AI is trying to escape, and yet there's these Turing people who are kind of the ones enforcing the restrictions. I guess like you'd call them space police in some sort of case. The grungy vibes surrounded by insane tech. The mini plot lines of love, of betrayal, of manipulation by the AI. All of it was just so cool. So very compelling. It was hard for me to put this book down, and easily probably, I would say it's the best sci-fi book I've read ever. So Neuromancer by William Gibson, giving it a very solid 8.5 out of 10 to highly recommended read. Would recommend. And similar books recommendations. I mean, the one that recalls to me is Snow Crash, which I covered on this channel a couple of years ago. I gave that a 7.5. It in my opinion lacks in comparison to this book, and the metaverse concept, whilst interesting, I feel is cooler in this book, which is of cyberspace and the Matrix and the kind of attacking and hacking that Case does with the Quang Chinese hacking program and the AI. The visualizations there I think are much cooler. So that's going to be my little wrap up for today. This is a Value for Value podcast. If you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate if you gave some value back to me and to Juan as well at the same time. So you can do this Time, Talent, Treasure. Share this. Word of mouth is super critical. Love hearing your book recommendations as well, what you think I would enjoy reading. And then finally, some treasure. There's some links down below, which you can click on if you want to support us monetarily. And, I am live here on 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on a Wednesday. This will be the case for the next 2 to 3 weeks, 3 weeks probably. And then I'm going to be traveling, and there's going to be a bit of a gap whilst traveling, because whilst I was still trying to be reading, it's going to be very hard for me to actually do these book reviews because I'll be all over the place. So gap coming up in the future. What am I reading at the moment? I am reading 2 books. One is kind of Metamorphosis and Other Stories by Franz Kafka, and the other is Primer for Forgetting by Lewis Hyde. So those are probably 2 that'll be coming up soon. And yeah, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you very much for joining in. Hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Ciao for now. Karen out.